Hello, everyone. This is Mark Rhodes. Welcome to the new View Huddle. We are in March of 2021. The world continues to be, I don't know, pick an adjective, but we are making it through. The community is robust. The folks using Nav and Business Central are just on fire. A lot of upgrades and implementations going on, and really happy about all of that. If you haven't watched the huddle before, we get together representatives from each of the partners that are involved in the New View Strategic Partner Program and talk to them about really just current events and really whatever comes to my mind in terms of putting questions together. And today we're going to talk about the partner-customer relationship. And really, from both sides, how do you work better together? What is that relationship supposed to be about? And how do you really leverage the assets and the resources to make more and better effective use of that? And I got to tell you, my personal interest goes back decades for this, and especially when I was a partner, it was always interesting to me what made a good customer relationship versus a not so good one. And then when I was with the user groups, I actually did quite a bit of research around this, presented at several conferences, and I think there are always opportunities for improvement. And so really just we all want to help make the relationship better and help customers get more out of their relationship with their partner, because there are a lot of opportunities for that, a lot of great information, of course, resources and capabilities that the partner can bring to the customer relationship and helping you get more out of your Nav and Business Central system. So gosh, that was a long preamble. We're going to get to some questions and open discussion in a minute, but let's go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves. And in my upper left is Ben Baxter. So Ben, I'm picking on you to go first.
Perfect. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you and New View Strategies putting on these huddles. I think they're always great discussions and good to see different partners involved and sharing just thoughts about what's going on. But my name is Ben Baxter. Accent Software is the partner, and we specialize in just Dynamics 365 Business Central, so formerly Nav and Navision and whatever you want to call it. So way back when, and we specialize in manufacturing. That's why I'm out on the shop floor. But yeah, that's our kind of go-to is project costing and manufacturing.
Ben, that is the quietest shop floor I've ever heard.
Right?
It's very impressive there. Hey, Mary, welcome.
Hi, Mark. Thanks. I'm Mary Malone. I'm a customer engagement specialist at Innovia Consulting. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys today, and I'm happy to be part of the Innovia team. Our specialty is much like Ben's. We're in the Dynamics 365 BC Nav space and appreciate being invited. So looking forward to our conversation. There's going to be a lot of great war stories, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Thanks very much for joining, Mary. David?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for letting me join today, and good to see everyone again on the call today. I love the huddles as well. David Gersten with Dynamic Consulting. I'm a strategic engagement manager here. My new role started in January 1st was to specifically focus on our SMB ERP practice, GP, Nav, and Business Central. Although we do all things Dynamics, every application in the Dynamics platform across ERP and the customer engagement, as well as HoloLens, Power Platform, Azure, and a little bit of Microsoft 365. But excited to be here and talk about the Business Central world and Nav world. And I thrive on the partner customer relationship. That's kind of what my role's been for the last 15 years in this industry. I'm real excited to talk about it.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks very much. Erik.
Hey, Mark. Well,
Hey.
I'm Erik Hogarth. Business Central MVP. I have my little YouTube channel where I do a lot of development stuff and things all about Business Central. And when I'm not YouTubing, I'm working at eFocus in Canada, Vancouver. And we're we're kind of a two-part shop. So we have customers, local projects all over the world, I guess. But we also do a lot of apps for AppSource. And well, just before this meeting started, I was working on our SharePoint connector app, which we have a lot of success with, joining up two pieces of Microsoft that doesn't really talk together well to make them talk together well.
Excellent. Erik is also our museum curator and author of the book that you see over his left shoulder, the field guide there for Business Central. So a lot going on there. And then Jim, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here as well. My name's Jim High. I'm the SMB practice director for Stone Ridge Software. So Stone Ridge does, like a lot of these companies, all of the Dynamics products. We do F&O, CE, but my teams are responsible for BC, NAV, and GP implementations and projects. So happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks all again for joining. Let's go ahead and jump in and unravel some of the mystery and really highlight some key opportunities for improvement and recommendations. And I'm going to throw it out right from the start. What is the role of the partner? Of course, we're talking about for customers using BC and NAV, so the BC NAV partner. And if you want to differentiate a little bit between the role during an upgrade or implementation versus ongoing maintenance and support. And I'll let whoever wants to jump in go.
All right, I'll go first. I'm not shy. So I'll put it out there as the straw man, and then you guys can chat about it. So I think that the role of the partners help the organization optimize the value of their technology investment. And I think we do that whether we're in project or in between projects, that should be the main focus of what our work is. How we do it obviously is different when we're working on a project. Or when we're providing the support between projects. But I'll throw that out as what I think my role is as I work in that role as a partner to our clients. And you guys can have at it now.
I bet you every one of us would agree with that. Yeah, optimize. I think that's a great word, right?
Yeah, optimize. I think being the term partners is actually a really appropriate term.
Yeah.
Rather than a vendor or a, what other words you could fill in the blank. But I think partner, if you think about just, any relationship is, two people or two groups of people partnering together, and the strategic side of that is, support, it's consulting, it's actual consulting, helping them, love them, but at the end of the day, I think it's coaching, educating, and being available. I think that's one of the biggest complaints I hear when I'm talking to customers that are looking at vetting different partners. It's availability. And at the end of the day, it's accountability also. I mean, that comes down to our invested, prepared, and accountable value proposition we present here. That accountability is mutual. It's you have to be accountable to your customer, and the customer has to be accountable to the partner.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, sorry, Erik. I think just to build off what both Mary and David said, I think for me is obviously there's an element of we're the product experts. We can provide some guidance and be that partner, a thought partner for the customer. I think the other piece, as I look at it from a delivery standpoint, is keeping those guardrails on to prevent a customer from doing something that they probably wouldn't benefit them. So being that kind of safety valve to say, maybe you shouldn't go down that path. And sometimes giving the answer of no, where, that's not always popular kind of in customer service, right? But sometimes that's the best thing for them. So being confident and being able to say, you may not want to go down that path, here's why, and providing that. I think those guardrails are one thing that is important, I think, as we think of customer relationships.
I want to underscore this very specific point, and then Erik jump back in. But for all the customers out there listening, every one of us on this call has at least one story of where we have told very strenuously no to something for the customer, and they forged forward anyway, and it's come back and bite them in the butt. And I got to say, that's always been just fascinating to me, that as a partner, you get paid, right, to provide your expertise and experience, and then the customer doesn't listen to you. Now, there are cases where it's appropriate to, go ahead and go against that recommendation, but the partner does have the best intentions and wants to protect the customer. I'd say at least 9 times out of 10, right? And so for customers, when you hear no, trust me, we're trying to do the best job we can for you and give you the best recommendation that we know in terms of just everything considered. So don't be just don't take it so negatively, and trust that we are trying to do the right thing for you. It's always interesting. I think that's actually getting better. I think it used to be worse. I don't know. I hear better stories now about that, but I just, gosh, I wanted to underscore that. You hit it right on the head there. So thanks for that sidebar, Erik. What do you think?
Well, I actually think that the role of the partner has changed or perhaps progressed over the last few years, because getting a new piece of software is not necessarily a big deal anymore. There's so much software going around, and people are now getting used to learning new stuff. You get a new app on your phone. No, how does that work? You don't need to take a class for it. But I think that this progress is making it way more important for us to be visionary. And perhaps a lot of the no's that we're talking about, a large group of that is saying, no, customer, you don't have to do stuff the way you have always done it. There are better ways, there are newer ways, there are newer tools, there are newer options. So I think the role that I see more and more that we take is way more visionary, saying, okay, you have these opportunities. This is how other people are doing it now. New pieces of software comes around, new methods. So you don't have to ask for a new piece of software and then get it implemented the way you worked 10 years ago when you implemented the last system. I really see this as that there's something going on, and this is getting more and more important. And I also see customers out there coming to us because their current or old partner did not really give them any guidance. It was just, how did you do it in the old system? We will just implement that in the new one. And I think that's one of the big mistakes out there right now.
What customer can possibly keep up with everything that's happening with Microsoft alone, and then everything else happening with technology out there, right? It's I do think they should be relying on the partner more in terms of just bringing those solutions to bear. Yeah, Mary?
I would. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I'd jump in, maybe throw an analogy to it between projects and kind of normal operation. And that is, you're both in the car. When it's a project, the partner's driving the car, and the client is not a passenger, they're the co-pilot, right? So you're working together to go to a single destination, okay? And then normal operation, it's reversed. The client is the driver and the partner is the co-pilot. And so you're both working, again, to get to the same point. It's just one has more control based on the expertise of what's happening. So during a project, partner's driving. They know what it takes to be successful. They know what the steps are, how to guide the process, how to push people that need pushed. And then normal operation, we're the co-pilot. We're kind of giving some guidance. We're throwing in tips. We're trying to make people aware of what's out there. We're not really pushing for the business, but we're trying to keep them, like Mary said at the beginning, utilizing what's available. And there's so many more apps now, especially as we get to the cloud and the Power Platform, that there's so many tools available.
Yeah.
The littlest thing may be a really powerful solution for somebody that they just aren't aware exists yet. And so as the co-pilot, we're trying to throw in a little bit of guidance and then see where they drive the car.
That is
And I was
fantastic.
gonna
Beautiful.
I was
Beautiful.
gonna build on what Erik said too, with that how the role is changing over time. You know, I also think that there's a piece of it that's a trusted advisor around, and I'm going to build on Ben's analogy and say, okay, well, where do they want to go with the big picture of their digital transformation, right? Because it's really bigger, and I think the more successful we are is when the customer wants that kind of relationship and lets us in to see. They're not just showing us the slice of just put this in, but that bigger picture of where do they want to go, because then we can bring our collective expertise to solving it. And I think that's an awesome opportunity that we have, but it also requires, you know, I like to, you know, sometimes you're in a long distance relationship with, you know, partners are in long distance, and then sometimes you're a lot closer, and you know, no one size of relationship fits everybody. But I think we're more successful when we're closer in to seeing that big picture of where do they want to eventually get to, not just we're driving from South Bend to Chicago, but actually we want to circumnavigate the United States and, you know, never travel on an interstate. Okay, let's plan for that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and Mary, one other point, I think that's a fantastic point. I think the other thing from a partner's responsibility is to ask those questions that get beyond just the immediate thing that's been put out there, right? So the customer, I think, to be able to share that with us is super helpful. It's also, it behooves us to branch out and say, okay, well, I know you're asking for this, but why have you asked for that? Like, what is the main goal? Because that's, you start to get into some of those broader topics that I think are super important. So I think it's a fantastic point.
Well, I quite often, looking back at perhaps the most successful customer relationships that I have been part of, I have really been part of it, meaning that in case of a point of sales big implementation, I spent hours actually working the register in one of the stores, because you need to figure out what the work was. Working with a prophecy company, I have been out and seeing all the prophecies and stuff like that. So you gotta learn the customer's environment, what they're dealing with, how their business is operating. I think that hands-on very and these days that's challenging, because we see a new client only on Teams or Zoom, and then we need to figure out what actually makes the business tick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jim, that's such an excellent point. I'm such a proponent of customers treating their partners as partners. I forget who said the term partner is such a good term, right? Because that's truly what partners want to be, is a business partner. But you come to think of it, a lot of customers, what other relationships do they have in their business that's like that, where they're truly partnering with somebody? And it's usually not very many, right? So it's not a familiar type of relationship. It's not a natural one per se. And so on both sides, I completely agree. You gotta reach out and have the discussion about what the relationship should look like. And it's on the partners too, to explain that. Here's what I can help you with. Here's what I can provide. Here's what I can do for you. However, this is what how we have to work together.
Right. It's staying in each lane. You know, although the lanes do merge and they do align each other, you know, there are specific lanes that each, you know, the partner and the customer need to stay in. And I think that goes back, like Jim said, the no, like making sure the partner does say yes or no, or peel the onion back further, because the customer has this perception of how they do business is the way it should be done, but they don't realize the domino effects of, you know, that some of the decisions they may be making.
So along those lines, anybody have any comments in terms of how do you foster that relationship? How do you work together? What are some actions that both the customer and the partner can take?
So I think as a partner, we have to be the ones reaching out. If we're sitting on our hands expecting the client to reach out because something changed in their market, it's just not going to happen. They're too busy dealing with the change. And so as our partner relationship, it's important for us to reach out to them on a fairly consistent basis just to check in, just to see what's going on, what the changes are, and then meet them wherever they need us to meet them to help them address that change or that need.
I think I completely agree. When you talk about customers that are, again, vetting other partners, a common answer you hear is, they just sold me the software and disappeared, or, we went live and I haven't heard from them in years, or, they said they were going to respond and they didn't, or even just as simple as following up with notes after a phone call, or, the traditional going back to the old school handwritten thank you cards. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can separate you as a partner. Are you selling to them, or are customers buying from you? I think there's a big difference of that relationship, and it starts at the beginning. How well do you know the customer? How well have you done your research? Do you have similar customers of theirs? Remember, the greatest compliment is a referral. And if it can start with that, then you've already started with a proven record, and you just want to make sure you don't drop the ball. There's been a lot of, I was on a call yesterday with a GP 2013 customer that's been with the same partner since 2012, but are still waiting for things to be implemented and delivered, and they're just done. They're like, I'm done, we need to, and then the whole discussion of, where is GP? Like, are you ready to answer the tough questions? And I think part of it also, the customers don't know what tough questions to ask. There's so much noise out in the marketplace, whether or not it's competitive threats or it's just Microsoft's minutia of mesh. We talked of, Microsoft's confusion in their own website. How many times do people call you and think that they can implement Business Central for $70? Right. And because the messaging is that's what it is, or vice versa. So it's interesting. You just have to be there and empathize and be prepared, and again, just be willing to answer the tough questions and ask the questions that the customers aren't asking.
Yeah. I think we all have a litany of stories, both good and bad. And I think stories are so helpful, right, to demonstrate, actions and opportunities. And so let's talk about some stories for a minute. And let's start with the not so good ones. If you have a story in mind where it's been a kind of a rough relationship with the customer, if you want to highlight why it was rough, what was not working there?
I'll throw my head out. I think this is a scary question for people, but it just depends on your perspective of it, right? So we all think troubled customer. It's generally not a customer issue. It's a friction that happens between someone on the customer side and someone on the support side. And so I'll give one where we had a new controller come on board at a client, and we had our financial person working with them, and our financial person's a CPA and has very good accounting knowledge. The controller that just came on board didn't. And so when our support person was giving them guidance that went against kind of their homegrown way of doing some things, it caused friction, and they did not like it. And they said, we can't work with that person. Now they took the right approach and talked to us about it. And we switched out our support person. You can always address the friction if you know the friction exists. And our support person made us aware of it. The client also made us aware of it. So we dubbed them troubled. But it's something that can always be addressed. You just have to work through whatever the friction is being caused by.
Yeah. I've got two small examples. One is I think again it's expectation, not meeting expectations, and whether or not those were realistic expectations is one. There was a specific customer with it was an ISV product that under-delivered based on possibly a knowledge gap of us, the client, and the ISV. Previous experience, it was a new to Business Central ISV that just wasn't ready, and a lot of yeses were made, and mid-implementation, it's, right before live, certain things just weren't happening, and it's a matter of how do you handle those, and, were they expectations, were they assumptions, and again, really just opening up the kimono and figuring out who's responsible and focusing on the solution rather than the whys and pointing fingers. I think that gets messy. And then the second one was, a CEO that right after go live, unfortunately, their accounting contact got sick with COVID and was out for like 4 weeks. And that CEO, small business, hadn't participated in user acceptance testing and hadn't gone back and looked at the training videos. And all of a sudden, the system sucks. It's not doing what they thought it was going to do. It's not, came off QuickBooks, and why is it so hard to do that? And it's like, we invited you to all these things. You didn't plan for plan B. You didn't expect your main people to be out. And, whose fault is that? And, it causes a lot of angst because that there's a fault that, again, you don't want to point fingers, but you're trying to resolve it, and they're trying to run their business also. And it becomes just so easy for sometimes customers to just throw something away and say, no, I'm just going back to, the old way. So you have to feel their pain and sit in their shoes and kind of re-educate sometimes.
Yes, similar maybe, David, to what you're talking about. I think another trap that we can fall into is there's occasions where we probably all have a story where a customer has a lot of knowledge tied up in like a single individual that really knows the system well. And especially on these heavily customized systems, we've all seen those, right, where there's one person that just knows what happens, probably has his or her hands in all of it. But that becomes that's a choke point, right? And a point of failure that if that person exits the organization or is making decisions sometimes in a vacuum, we don't even know why necessarily. And sometimes you just kind of layer things on top of other things. And I think that's a challenge that, we try to avoid by just including other people, to David's point, and other things like user acceptance testing or those types of things, requirements. But I think it's easy to kind of fall into that, especially as you have those really customized systems where someone on the client end even is doing a lot of that work on their side. And then all that knowledge is in that one spot, and it becomes a dangerous situation. And now you're really relying on an individual to make all these decisions and even do some of the work that's difficult to manage if that person were to exit. So
I want to agree with Jim completely. One of the things I wrote down in preparation for our talk was we need redundant relationships so that you're not, one person can't. And that's also true on our side as partners, that we need to have redundant relationships too, because what if somebody on our team had gone out with COVID, in your example, 3 days before go live, but we need to, I find if I think of troubled relationships in clients, over the last 40 years of my career, a lot of it stems from not being redundant in the organization. And what are the key 5 contacts and the key 10 contacts and then the key 20, so that, they're getting information so they can stay up to date and be trained and skill up, if you will, that whole side of it. I think you guys probably have some more experience even than I do, that, it can't just be an IT project anymore. This is strategic, and we have to, You know, I know people are busy at the C-suite level. That's okay. But this is one of the things they should be busy with at some level, right? You know, it can't be project number 50 on their list that doesn't reflect the importance of what we do to the organization. And I also want to build on what Ben said too. I think the other side of it is maybe not redundant relationships, but any other kind of bucket I could put in has to do with communication, and maybe what David said about expectations. But if you have that open communication, if you're in a good relationship, you know, nobody ever, a long time ago, I wrote a book about service recovery, and nobody ever likes to hear, hey, I have a complaint. But the only thing worse than hearing I have a complaint is not hearing it, right? I read a book years ago, it was called A Complaint is a Gift, and I believe that complaint's that gift. So as Ben says, if you have the kind of relationship where somebody can open up and say, this part isn't working, then that gives us partner people and again, we assume everybody's of goodwill. We want to change that. We don't want them to have that pain. So a good, you know, you talk about what's a model customer is someone who trusts us with all kinds of things and trusts us to respond to that with grace, and fix it for them. So.
Perhaps last to the table on this one, I think where I've seen projects go totally off rails is quite often, not quite often, that's wrong, but I've seen it happen when you're actually not dealing with the customer, but you're dealing with a proxy for the customer. Typically some sort of management consultant company who has been hired by the customer to, you know, analyze their processes and be a proxy for the customer. And I've seen projects managed like with that just going down the drain because there's too many players and they have different goals, and that can get ugly.
That's a
good point there too.
Yeah, and it's hard to question them because they're presented to you as the trusted advisor of the customer.
Right.
Yes. If you don't trust what they're saying, then you're ultimately insulting not just them, you're also insulting your customer's decision.
And as being a technical guy, if the proxy entity then have, you know, a tiny bit of IT technical knowledge and start trying to design stuff, and so they end up selling an idea that's wrong. Let's just use that word, and then you have to backpedal, and suddenly you're the bad guy in the relationship because you're pointing out that the great idea they have cannot work.
I think if we reverse that, though, isn't that what our customers are thinking of us when we make those ISV recommendations also? You know, I know Ben and Erik come from the ISV space, and I think, Jim, you've been in there before, not currently, you know, but the trusted customer, my trusted customer expects if I recommend ABC, that it's going to work. And then, you know, then you have the domino effect of either a fail, you know, something going wrong or service levels not being there or the product not being, and that's, you know, again, one face, one back to pat or one, you know, one face to slap and one back to packed, you know, at the end of the day, you are that trusted advisor there. So we're in that role. It's interesting at that point, Mark, we become the customer and the partner.
Right.
Where, you know, it just changes that whole dynamics and really shift those responsibilities.
I've heard a couple key points here. One, we're talking about a pretty complicated environment, pretty complicated situation, right? You are installing complicated software to support a complicated business and trying to do it very, very smoothly and where it's not disruptive whatsoever. That's complicated. And amongst all this, I heard Interestingly, it's not, two of the most important factors are not really about ones and zeros. I heard trust and communication. Very, very interesting that it comes down to those personal relationships, having the trust to have the right conversations and having the communication channels open for that. Very, very interesting. And those are not easy either, right? So especially in this virtual world. But so that brings me to then, what recommendations do y'all have for customers to make the most of their relationship with their partner? Think about those good stories and share some elements of why the projects, the relationships went so well.
I'll jump on that. I think it's setting the right expectations up front, like I said before, but the best customers are the ones that, the best projects end up with the customers that work together. Again, and one of the things, I'm in the middle of a sales cycle, let's call it, and we're on our 5th demo, okay? And how many demos, typically these projects, you don't need to spend 12 hours demoing certain things. And the reason we're doing this is, one, the size of the project's going to be pretty big. So there's a good ROI, pre-sales, we're looking at that. But the other thing is this customer's been burned, both by their previous CRM partner and their previous ERP partner, non-Microsoft. And they don't want to have that experience again. So they are trying to find ways up front why the solution won't work. And they're challenging us. And it's exciting to get to that, because the one thing is, we know they're not doing this with, how many other partners could they be doing that with? That investment that, so we've already feel like it's ours to lose type of thing. So having the customer at that point own a part of it. I think, Ben, was it you or someone last time on the last huddle said, the customer has to realize it's their software. And ever since that last huddle, I've been actually using that in my cycle, telling the customer that this is your software. We're going to configure it the way you need to, and we're going to do the best, and we're going to make it, but you have to own the software. Mm-hmm. And I love that philosophy. And I thought it was Ben, or it was someone quoting your mom,
I'll take credit for it. That sounds like something I would say.
I mean, yeah, but it was so powerful. And I think that really, Mark, comes down to, if the customer owns their solution, then they can do it. Now the flip side of it is, the customer that downloads the app source trial of a ISV out there on their own, and then it breaks something, and then they call you and they're like, why did this, it's like, well, we told you to talk to us, So there's a devil's advocate to them owning their software. But I think it's understanding business processes might change to accommodate the software, because we don't want to, it's not designed to customize and change it completely. So the willingness to change through their process. And the second is own it. And then leverage us. Remember that we're going to reach out to them, like Ben said, but the phone, it's kind of like my mom always telling me, you can call me. Well, the phone, you have a phone too, at the end of the day, have them feel like they can call you and ask you, or team, affiliate on Teams, or give them an easy method to reach out to you.
Yeah, Dave, can I build off that point too? And I think I was going to say ownership of the project as well. I think that's super important. And even at some of the things that we've seen happen that really help that is, even in the kickoff meeting, when the client, this is not that the partner comes in and does this project for the customer, right? Like, we are in the car together, like Ben said, we're going down this road together. So I think it's helpful in our kickoff meetings, we'll often have the customer say, here's why we're doing the project, get buy-in from their team. So it's not Stoneridge coming in and saying, here's what we're doing for you. It's the customer saying, here's what we're doing together, and setting those expectations up front, kind of getting that buy-in and really showing that sense of ownership, which I think is hugely, hugely important. And then the other thing to me is what Mary said earlier, is just communication. And we have a saying at Stoneridge, it's if you see something, say something, right? So it's more about getting that stuff out there. And some of our best projects have had people being very vocal early on so that you can actually correct those things. And that's the other thing I think I try to set in kickoff meetings early on is we have risks and we have issues. We want our risk register to be long because that means we're considering all of these things. We want our issues list to be short because we've mitigated those risks. So it's one of those things where I think that communication is, if they see anything, if you think this is going to be a challenge, tell us. Let's put it on our list. Let's consider that as we go forward and make these decisions going forward. So that communication piece and the ownership, I think, are the two biggest things to successful projects.
Again, I think this is all about doing an investment in the client up front, getting to know their business, getting to know their people, getting to know their vision and goals, so you can be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the engagement of the client it's not just the users, it's the management too, and assigning a very high value to the software that's going to run the business. You get asked so many different things. Hey, can I do this? Can you quote me on that? If they assign a high value to it and they know that it's going to have an impact on what they can do, then generally projects go better. If they say, hey, can I do this? Or my old system did that, then they don't necessarily associate a value to it. It's just, well, I wish it did that, but I don't really care if it does or not. When they're engaged and they already assign some predetermined value to what they're asking about, the project's going to go better. Always does. They don't have remorse as soon as they ask the question. They're engaged. They want to help. They want to be involved. They're there to guide and work with you to make sure it's doing exactly what it needs to get to that goal.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would add to, just because we haven't talked about it, and it's probably music to Mark's ears, is the other piece of it is their commitment to ongoing learning. I think that if anything, what I see a lot of is, you have, maybe it happens during some UAT and then there's a go live and then somebody leaves and nobody trains them, but somebody remembers. And then, in a lot of positions, there's turnover in a pretty short time period. You're 4 people down the line and nobody quite knows what they're supposed to do or why, let alone the adjacencies, right, of their functions. And so what should happen between projects almost is it can't just be break fix between projects. On the client side is how do we get them excited around staying up to date, which I think helps with engagement both at the senior level, but also at the user level. And I know everybody's experimenting with different ways of getting training to people. And, is it 2-minute YouTubes? Is it half-hour, full day, full week courses? There's lots of different delivery models that we have. But we can all have them. It's how do we get people to show up for them? Yeah. And, how did training get to be a bad word, kind of, like it's part and parcel of what we all do it. We all do different training, how did it not become part and parcel of what a good, of what customers, our clients should be planning for as part of how they optimize the value, just to go back to my original statement, is through that. So.
Oh, bless you, Mary. Yes. ongoing learning, ongoing training. It's just fact. People forget over time. There is brain drain. You get stuck in some old ways and it's hard to look. You don't have time to go investigate new and better ways. And then on top of that all, it's just kind of that mindset to try to improve. And you're absolutely right. And you know what? I never really correlated these two themes before, but if you're taking true ownership of the system, you are thinking about how do I get more out of this investment, out of what we already have, right? We all know, here's another fact, we all know that nobody's using 100% of the system. It's just, nobody knows it all, right? And not so in terms of thinking about what else is in the system that I can be taken advantage of, that is powerful, but stems from feeling like an owner of it. That's a great correlation there. Wow. I'm thinking through my experiences, and so much comes from that ownership point. So I really like that. We could spend a whole nother discussion just on that topic, but I'm going to go ahead and do a wrap-up question. And here's another thing that I've experienced, especially with the user groups. A lot of folks would come to me and say, boy, I'm just fed up with my partner. I'm not getting response. Jim, I think you highlighted earlier, just, general availability, and it's a two-way street there too, right? It's the partner can't drop everything to take a phone call no matter when that phone call comes in. So but I've heard from a lot of customers, they get frustrated. They're starting to look around for another partner. What would you all say? What would you all recommend in terms of those customers that have reached a point of frustration? How do they go about trying to salvage that relationship? Because we all know it's a big deal to switch partners. There's a lot of effort involved. There's a lot of waste involved. And, if you can salvage the relationship, a lot of times that really works out for the better. And it's usually just a communication issue, something along those lines. But what would you all recommend to those customers out there that are a bit frustrated? What do they do?
I think the first thing is, and I even tell people when they call me, Mark, go talk to your partner. Like, have you told your partner you're unhappy? Because first of all, I don't want Mary calling me and saying, why'd you take my customer? There's enough partner conflict and channel conflict. We don't want that. But what we want is the customer to really go do that due diligence and ask them, can we all get along? Whose role is it? What tools were used, and kind of, have you had that conversation, and how high in that organization? Because I know there's not a partner out there that would, unless there's that 0.0001% customers that none of us want. Okay, but the other 99.99%, every partner in this channel that I've experienced or heard of or worked with or been part of is going to do their damnedest to keep a customer. But the worst thing is not knowing.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, go have those conversations, have those tough conversations. Are you talking to the right people in the organization? Who have you talked to? Are they managed by Microsoft? Get Microsoft involved if you need to, but really start expanding that depth of question, and don't nickel and dime. Don't cross out. It's not about the pennies and cents and the dimes. It's about the thousands and thousands of dollars and hours you've invested in this, and let's see how we can come together.
Mm-hmm.
So I would actually like to challenge Dave's comment here a bit, because his definition of the channel or the industry is more shaped by, the old nav partners, and not the hundreds/thousands of new BC partners that are coming into the channel right now from their generic Microsoft world. Mm-hmm. And going back to the due diligence part, what I see is that a lot of customers are getting the Business Central license from the same place where they get Office 365. And they might even have a couple of girls who are Dynamics experts. And at some point, you might need to switch to a partner with experience.
I agree with that, Eric. I accept that challenge. I definitely, I think if I put the caveat, let's call it the Dynamics community. They're definitely, you could fog a mirror today and sell a license, and I want to put that caveat that they're not working with that type of partner. But yeah, I agree.
But I will gladly put out the message saying that if your partner do not have experienced people working with Business Central, you need to find another partner that has. And to those partners that are now sending me evil eyes from that, then get some people. This is not a trivial piece of software you're selling. This is an ERP system. It's even we who have been in this business for decades do not know the entire application. It's really, really big. It's really, really complicated. So there is some due diligence to be done on selecting the right type of partner.
Yeah, I would go with you definitely have to reach out to your partner, make it known there's an issue. If your partner doesn't do anything, then they've made their decision, right? If there's no corrective action, your partner's already made the decision for you. But now you have the tough task because you have to find a new partner. And like Erik said, there's many partners that throw I sell Business Central or I support Business Central on the website, and they have no business being in this channel at all. So you got to find someone, hopefully that works in your industry, but at least has a track record of the software. If you ask them what Navision is and they don't know, find a different partner. They haven't been working with it long enough.
And Ben, I think what you brought up, I think, is that give people a chance to make a plan for improvement. But I think if we're all honest, there's often that the customer has to absorb some of the responsibility for a relationship that went haywire. I mean, especially as David would point out, within the larger context of the folks that know Nav and Navision particularly. And so if we get on let's do 6 months together, and then part of it's going to be a weekly phone call and the customer no-shows. Well, that's a hint that maybe the partner wasn't the only cause for that the relationship wasn't working, and I think partners deserve their fair share of blame, and we can take it, but sometimes it's only one, as with most partnerships, right? Both sides share, if not equally, share something that's correctable. So
yes, it sounds like we're all saying kind of the same themes here. It seems like, right? And to me, it's as a customer, I think the advice is you got to be real with yourself on what is the real issue. Are you hitting the limit in terms of the partner's expertise or industry knowledge or some of those things, or is it something like it's a personality conflict with your consultant and it's a relationship issue? Some of those things can be fixed. To Erik's point, if you really are hitting the limit of what that partner can offer in terms of technical experience, then maybe that's the point you have to make a switch. But I think it's really determining, are you really there, and being realistic with your scenario and saying, is it to that level? Do we need to get a divorce, or can we go through counseling, right, and work this out? So
when I was doing the research and presentations a while back, it was amazing how many customers were on their second partner. And it's also even more interesting about how much better the relationship was the second time around. And what that tells you is that people understood better second time around what the relationship was supposed to be about, how to build trust into the relationship, how to communicate better, all of those things, because then they had the experience. And so hopefully we can save some folks some effort and tribulations, and encourage them, if you have a relationship with your partner that's not optimal, you heard right here, partners are interested in optimizing your business and the software and how it supports your business. And so, hey, yes, have a discussion with them, communicate your expectations, communicate where it's not going well. And very important to keep in mind, Mary, yes, it's never 100% one way or the other. So great points there. Oh man, I sure hope everybody that's watching got a number of great ideas, or at least encouragement out of this. in terms of improving your relationship going forward and working better with your partner. I think there's so much value that's available if you work at it and really focus on it. And partners can do wonderful things for your business. So folks, Ben, Mary, Jim, Eric, David, thank you so much again for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll look forward to doing another huddle soon, but thank you very much for discussing this today.
Thanks for having us.
Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Good talking with you.
Everyone.
And so before you go, everyone, subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll be notified of other huddles as we have them coming up. And certainly, if you have something that you'd like to hear from the panel on, any topics that you'd like us to discuss, let us know. That would be kind of fun to include those. And we'll see you very soon. Good luck with your partner relationships out there. Everybody take care.